First of all, thank you everyone for taking time to join us. I know this has been a crazy, to say the very least, a crazy fall term, and we really appreciate that you would take time out of your busy schedule to spend with us. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are expecting a pretty big crowd. So if, and I'm sure we're all very accustomed to online meetings over the last 6 months, but if you please put your phones or your computers on mute to just minimize the background noise, we'd appreciate that. We do want this to be interactive, and we will be pausing a few times for some questions. The way that you can interact, if you, well, at least on my computer, it's on the right-hand side. You'll notice a question and a chat bar. Both of those will be monitored by Susie Balk, our marketing manager, and Stephen Webster, our implementation specialist. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to add those to the question bar. And again, we'll be taking a few speed bumps along the way to pause and address those questions. And then the chat bar as well, if you have any insight or feedback or anything you'd like to share, either with the JBL or Junction team or the larger group, the chat box is a great place to do that as well. I'll also mention at the end of the presentation, we'll be drawing 3 lucky names, winners of our $25 gift card, Visa gift card. So, please make sure to stay for that. Must be present to win. Please stick around for the end of that. And then finally, in housekeeping, following the call, we'll be sending an email to all attendees with just some follow-up information in terms of, if you like what you see here and like to get hands-on, we'll send you some information in terms of how you can get access to your course or courses to dive in. And also, if you need additional support, we can connect you with a JBL account manager who can answer any additional questions or help you with implementation or fulfillment questions. We'll also include in that a recording of today's presentation if you want to go back and review anything, or if you want to share that with friends or some colleagues, we certainly encourage you to do that as well. And finally, on that email, we'll include just a very brief survey that you'll be able to ask him maybe any additional questions that you weren't able to get to during the live presentation. And also, we'd like to get your feedback in terms of what we're going to show you. This is our first phase in what we're calling the Next Level Online courses that we're developing in partnership with Junction Education. We are already starting on the second phase, our next batch of courses, which will be live in early 2021. So we'd love to get your feedback on what you see in terms of how we can also improve these and make them a more useful and meaningful tool for your students to learn from, and for you as instructors and educators to teach from. So with that, we'll roll. My name is Bill Lawrenson, and I'm the product manager for the health professions team at Jones Bartlett Learning. And I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Derek Wessler, who is the co-founder and VP of Sales and Marketing for Junction Education. Junction Education, if you're not familiar, is a developer of online and adaptive courseware. And Junction believes in empowering educators to take control over hybrid and online learning with intuitive and focused learning platforms to drive better performance for students and educators. And that's certainly a goal that we share with them, and we're thrilled to be partnering them with these online courses. I'll be kicking things off and give you some background in terms of our specific offering and the market problems that we're attempting to solve with these products. Then I'll turn it over to Derek, and he'll dive a little bit deeper and give an interactive demo of our medical terminology course. Then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A, and we'll give you some information about next steps. So, as I mentioned, obviously, COVID has impacted all of our lives in many ways, to say the very least. And certainly the last 6 months have been very challenging in education. And we've been spending a lot of time with our customers trying to understand what they're going through and offering support. And that really accelerated the development of these courses. I'm sure many of you have faced the challenge of maybe very quickly having to migrate your traditionally face-to-face or ground courses to either hybrid and or online courses. And I'm sure at least some of you probably had to do that, maybe with or without a lot of guidance or direction. And I know that we've worked with a lot of our customers to lend support in that area. As we look at customer needs, and some things have changed for sure, and some things certainly haven't. Some things that remain consistent is still the need for great content. Great content and quality instructional design, and whether you're teaching face-to-face or online, those are two very, very important needs. So we certainly understand that, and content is really what we do, what our specialty is, and if you look at the textbook, and you talk about instructional design, the textbook happens to be a tried and true model of really great instructional design. There's chapters, there's learning objectives, there's A heads, B heads, there's pedagogy that supports the content. There's even assessment in that as well. So translating that into an effective and quality online experience is certainly a challenge, and that's where our friends at Junction Education really have provided a great framework in which to build these courses. Student performance and retention. Retention is obviously the name of the game. We want to keep students enrolled in courses. We want to be able to track their performance towards learning goals. Obviously, when you're not seeing students every day in an online format, that presents some challenges. So one of the great things about technology, when it works well, is that it gives us the ability to track student performance and track student data in a way that allows us to to intervene when students may or may not be engaged, or when there are problems that could lead toward at-risk students. We're able to help them at the right time with remediation or intervention. Easy to use. Technology is awesome. Technology is great when it works, right? But it can quickly becomes a problem when it's not reliable, or it's just too confusing. I think we've all seen and maybe even used a number of learning platforms that are have so many features and so many bells and whistles, and it's it may be a really great product, but requires intensive training to use and/or intensive experience to be able to use that effectively. So turnkey, something that's intuitive, something that's easy to use, is very, very important to us. And affordability and great value. Obviously that's something that we hear from customers all the time. That the need for affordable products, and it's something that as we built out these courses, we really paid a lot of attention to. We still believe in choice. We're still printing and selling and marketing print textbooks, but we're also delivering our content and our products in ways that that the market wants. So ebooks, for example, we know a lot of folks choose standalone ebook products strictly for their price advantage. So our philosophy as we built these out was to build as much value as we could and keep the cost to a point where affordability, students will be able to afford the products. So here's our first phase of these online courses that these are available today, right now. We launched these this fall. Medical terminology, legal and ethical issues for health professions, and phlebotomy. These are all available now. They're all live, and we have customers using these. A little later in the fall, we have our anatomy and physiology offering. That's actually will be officially alive next week. I think the course is actually live now. And then later in the fall, introduction to health professions. We chose these courses very deliberately. These are areas where we had first of all, very strong products and very strong content. They're also very important courses in the sense that things like medical terminology, law and ethics, A&P, these are foundational courses that a number of students on different allied health tracks will take probably pretty early in their academic career. So again, going to that theme around retention and student performance, we wanted to make sure that as students are entering these programs, we're giving them a great experience in these very, very important foundational courses so that they're able to master that knowledge, stay in the course, and perform well so that they can continue on their academic journey. So I'm going to turn it over to Derek in just a moment, and I certainly don't want to steal his thunder around the key features here, but at a high level, I'll just touch on some of these. Smart design and any online product or course, we want to make sure that the content flows logically, right? Like a textbook would, right? Isn't presented in a very instructionally sound way. Content we know is very, very important. That's what we do at JBL. We've got trusted content that has been developed over multiple editions and peer reviewed and written by great subject matter experts. But then we wanted to pair that and marry that and support that by a number of media resources, specifically video. Some of the video resources contained in the products are things that we have developed, and some of them may be open source. But all of them have been curated and vetted by subject matter experts to make sure that they align specifically with the learning objectives presented in the textbook content at the appropriate level. And again, just another way to engage students, in the content. You'll see in the courses, there's always multiple layers of assessment, diagnostic, formative, summative, covering different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. We want to assess the students and make sure they're tracking and mastering the content in the appropriate way at the appropriate time. Data analytics that are serviceable both by the students, that they can see how they're tracking toward learning goals, and then also from the instructors to look at individual students' performance relative to different learning goals and or a class or a cohort as an aggregate to see what students are, how engaged they are, how the correlation between engagement and their performance is. Again, this is all with the theme of using data to drive effective student performance. Customizable. I think you'll see our courses, again, the goal is these are easy to use and turnkey courses that you could literally teach from tomorrow. But in the event that you need to modify that or tailor that to your specific course needs, we make that very easy to do. And Derek will probably walk you through how we can hide or show certain, reorganize or assign different content in a different way that may align better with the way you've structured your course. LMS integration, obviously very, very important. I would venture to guess that most of you are at your programs are using an LMS. One of the great things about these courses is integration with all the major LMSs is completely seamless. It's easy, reliable, and we'll walk you through what that looks and feels like. Accessibility is obviously important. We want to make sure that this content is available and accessible by all students. The thing we left off the slide that I'll just mention is mobile friendly. We know how important that is, especially when students are learning from a distance. There may be students out there that maybe don't have access to computers or laptops, but I'd venture to guess that most students have access either to a phone and or a mobile device. So we want to make sure that we're delivering these courses where students are. So Derek, if you're ready, I'm going to hand the ball over to you.
I am ready.
All right, here you go.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So we're starting here in Canvas in your LMS because, as Bill said, that's where your students are going to start. That's where you're going to start. In the sake of ease of use, we've set up what we call single sign-on through the LMSs. This works, I'll demo it in Canvas here, but works the same for Canvas, Blackboard, Desire to Learn, Moodle, Sakai, Schoology, anything that is LTI compliant. And what that means is you can drop a link into your LMS, into your particular section. And when I click on this, which I'm going to do here, right, and you have to load this in a new window, you're going to notice that a new tab just popped open and it dropped me right here into my medical terminology course, Professor Wessler, Fall 2020. So seamless integration, we know that a lot of your students are not on campus right now. We know that there's all these day one issues with getting people enrollment codes and whatnot. So single sign-on means that a student clicks that link. If they don't have an account with us, one will be immediately created. Same goes for you as the instructor. And they will be dropped specifically into your course section. And what I mean by that, right, this is my medical terminology course. So we have a master course. And when you create your course sections, you are given an instance of it. This is mine for Fall 2020. That means that you obviously have your own gradebook. It means that for discussion boards, it's your specific section. It means that you can customize it as you like. So you're given this master shell, we like to say, and students come in here and they get everything that they need into your course. The content. So let's talk about this for a moment before we get into the specific pages. So this is the medical terminology course. I'm going to walk through this particular course and the look and feel and the flow. This structure and flow is the same for MedTerm, for phlebotomy, for legal ethics. All of the courses will follow this same structure and flow. If you do want access to any other courses, just request that from your rep and they can get you access to it. But the flow is very, very similar. You will see as I scroll down here that the courseware is aligned to the chapters of the textbook. The textbook, as Bill also said, there is a lot of thought that went into the design of the textbook, how the chapters are broken down, how the A heads or subsections within the chapters are broken down. We followed all of that. That also means that if you currently use the textbook or you like to use simply the textbook and not all the other materials, that this is compatible with that. So if you are somebody that wants to continue to use the textbook, very, very compatible. In terms of the material that we're going to go through, it is the wealth of material that's been created by the publisher. So the textbook chapters, the assessment items, the ancillary materials in terms of practice quiz questions, vocabulary, audio glossary. What we've done is we've broken it down and we've sequenced it in a way where it makes sense. We've also then supplemented it with material from the OER world, the open educational resource world, often images, videos, and you'll see what that actually looks like. You can use this courseware for face-to-face courses, for hybrid courses, or for fully online courses. We actually had a number of people use our courseware last term for face-to-face courses on Friday that became online courses by Monday. It's all seamless. The material is all online, but it can be used for any modality, of course. So we've been dropped into our course, and I'm going to walk through chapter 4 on the integumentary system. And I'm going to click into that, and you're now going to see what a lesson looks like in the courseware. This, obviously, the integumentary system. The other lessons, as I mentioned, whether they're in phlebotomy or, in MedTerm or phlebotomy or any of the other courses, look and feel the same way. The goal here is that we've structured and sequenced the content in a way that makes sense to students, so how they're going to actually walk through the material. So we begin with an introduction and a warm-up. And behind this, and I will click through these pages so you can get a look, are videos, because that's where most students start their learning. And whether they do it through our platform or YouTube, we don't want them on YouTube. We want them doing it here, and video is a great modality to get students engaged in new concepts, new terms. We then bring in a case study. The case study, you'll see it's short, but this is where we bring in the real world application of all of this content. It is bookended, so you'll see we have the case study introduction at the top of the lesson. If I go to the bottom, you also see that we revisit the case study at the end of the lesson with a short assessment, and we tell students that. So it primes them up front. Here's a real world scenario. They go through the material and they know they're going to be assessed on it at the end of the lesson. I will also mention here that the courses are entirely editable, which means that if you say, you know what, I don't want to use the case study, you can simply take it out. You don't need to use any of the material in here, but it is provided for you. Moving through the material then, this particular topic is broken down into two subtopics, the integumentary system and then clinical aspects of the skin, and all of the material is aligned to that. We then get to the lecture slide. So if you think about this as a learn, practice, assess kind of pedagogy, this is all of the learning material through the lecture slides. We then have the practice activities, and the practice activities are, again, aligned to each of the subtopics. And then the evaluation or the assessment, and that is the case study, which is the assessment, or the lesson assessment, which is a more traditional kind of quiz. And that's where the adaptive engine kicks in, and we will start to recommend to students how they might want to personalize their learning. So let me click through some of this. So we're going to begin with our introduction or our warm-up. Students, and we see this in all of the research, students like, or most students like, to begin their learning with videos. It's very engaging. It introduces them to new terms and new concepts in a very simple manner. They can actually hear how things are pronounced. They can get a very good overview of topics. So we provide that for them. We tell them that this is not a substitute for the reading. This is simply a primer. And what we've done in this course is we've provided a range of video series. So you have Bozeman Science, Crash Course, and Khan Academy. And we've chosen these series, if you will, because several reasons. One is that the material is actually very good, and it aligns to college level courses, and it aligns well to the textbook. The reason we've chosen 3 is that these are all fairly different. Bozeman Science is fairly basic, straightforward. You can see it's this gentleman talking to PowerPoint slides. Crash Course, as some of you may be familiar with, much faster, much higher production quality. And then Khan Academy, which is much more of a walkthrough. So it's much more practice walkthrough. Students can choose what they like. They don't need to go through all of these, but we want students to get used to this. And some students like Bozeman Science, some students like Crash Course, some students like Khan Academy. We're giving them the options to actually choose what they want to use. In some cases, as we have here, we've also brought in some additional videos. Things like TED Ed are great quality, really good material. So we've brought those in as well and made it available to students. It's a really nice primer, and frankly, it keeps students off of YouTube and off of Google, where they're going to start searching for things, which ends up being a bad place to go. Students get lost, they get distracted, they end up getting material that may be incorrect or not the right level. So we want to keep them here. So the students go through their introduction, and then in terms of navigation, what they're going to do is they most likely click on this next button. So you'll see I have a next button here and a back button here. And that's usually when students are going through the material the first time, that's how they navigate. They do also have the option of jumping to any other page within the lesson, and you can see that I'm highlighting the breadcrumbs here. They also finally, if I open my menu, you'll see that I can actually open up all of the course, and I can actually navigate to any page within the course through this menu. But what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to click my case study and come right here. This is the case study that comes from the textbook material. So it's well aligned. It's not something that's pulled randomly, and it sets up the material in a consistent way from the textbook. I'm going to scroll down here, and you're going to see that this case study is very, very short. This is 60 seconds worth of reading. You don't want students having to, if it's 10 minutes of reading, they're not going to do it. Very, very short, and presented in a way that would be presented in the real world. We're priming them, and as you can see here, we're also telling them that at the end of the lesson, you're going to be asked a number of questions about this. So we've primed students, and now we're getting into the heart of the material. So I've clicked through, and I'm now on topic 4.1, the integumentary system. All of the material on this page focuses on this subtopic. So we're breaking down the chapter into more bite-sized pieces. Students are presented with a couple of things here. So the first thing is the text reading. This is my ebook reading, and you see I can scroll down here. It's jumped to the correct page. So this introduction, this is section 4.1. So it jumps me to the right page. It allows me to navigate through my ebook. You'll notice here that I have some green. I have highlighting. This is my ebook, right? I can highlight, I can take notes. I have my audio feature here. Right, so the ebook has the audio. It can be read to students if they'd like. That's not only an ADA thing, but a lot of students like to actually have the audio while they're reading along with it. So it's a very nice feature. And students get this ebook here. It's the complete ebook. So they're jumped to the correct portion, but they have access to a complete ebook. They do not need a physical textbook. They don't want a physical textbook. They don't need any other material. If they adopt Junction, or if you adopt Junction and they use this courseware, that is all they need for the course. There's no add-ons, there's no upsells, there's no additional. This contains everything that you need. In addition to the reading, they're also given the key terms. The key terms, again, broken down for this particular subtopic. And you can see that it's in a med term course. It's not only the term, it's the pronunciation, and it's the audio. So a lot of students, right, this is being able to pronounce these terms is very hard, but very important. So we're giving them that audio where they need it as well. And then finally, we're giving them some exercises. And the exercises, this is self-reflection, right? This is, I've just gone through the material, let me practice it a little bit. That will help me remember some of this. It will help me determine if I'm ready to move on or not, right? So I'm gonna be able to go through and I'm gonna be able to put in some of my answers, and you'll see that I can check all of my answers immediately. Oh, I got that one wrong. I'll put that in there. But you could see all of the answers Self-correcting right here, this doesn't get submitted to the instructor. This is assessment for the sake of learning. So students can use this to practice what they've learned and determine whether they're ready to move on or not. So if I continue to think through what's in this lesson, my next page is 4.2, which is the next lesson, clinical aspects of the skin. I'm actually going to jump. I'm going to use these buttons here at the top to jump to the lecture slides. So the lecture slides are presented here for you. They're obviously tied to the book. This is an area where we do see a lot of customization by instructors. So you can take these slides and customize them if you'd like. If you also had your own slides that were tied to the integumentary system that you wanted to load in here, very simple to pull these down and put yours up. That feature is there for you to use. You can also work with our help desk. So our help desk is happy to assist you with that. If you said, I have some slides I want to load into my course, we can do that for you as well. Continuing to move through, so I have my practice center. We talked about the content being laid out in a learn, practice, assess module flow. So this is my practice activity, all related to topic 4.1. My practice activities, I have 3 sets of practice activities. These are aligned to Bloom's levels. So we're starting with the more of the basic, right? Pronounce and spell. Can you actually determine how to spell this term correctly? The very, very beginning of Bloom's. And you will notice, by the way, that cutaneous was already filled in. So I had filled that in before I got here. When students take assessments in our platform, the assessments are actually saved. So I took this previously, and when I navigated back here, the session populated. So if I navigate away, I don't lose my session. It just loads for me. And you'll see I can check my answer here, and then I can move to the next question. And again, these are check the answer. The correct answers are provided. Self-reflection, self-evaluation. These are not high-stakes assessments for students. These are not intended to be graded. These are intended for students to use as practice. As I move up the Bloom's levels, I'm now moving to more conceptual level questions. And you'll see here that I have some multiple choice questions, and I'm going to click my check answer button. And when I click my check answer button, I am actually given feedback. This is intended to use assessment as a learning tool. So if I go through and I get the wrong answer, it's not, oh shucks, I didn't know it. I'm actually going to be given some information that's going to help me learn it. For those of you who used MedTerm when previously, you may recall that there was a test prep part of that product that was basically question sets and answers. This is all of the material from what was previously known as test prep, where students would go through, they would evaluate against specific learning objectives, in this case, learning objective 4.1, and they were presented with questions and feedback as they went through this. So this is presented here. It's all of that same material that was previously included in that test prep function. And then just moving up again, some labeling activities. So in this case, I'm given, and I'll blow this up to full screen so you can see it a little bit better, but I'm given an image and I have to drop down and I have to choose some things, and I can check my answers, and you can see I did not get all of those correct. But the goal here, give students a wealth of practice tools, allow them to use this to learn the material. Take all of that great material that came with the bigger textbook package that rarely made it to students and make it available to them in a way that makes sense. So as I keep moving forward through my student experience, I now get to more of the assessment or the evaluation end of the lesson. This is my revisited case study. You'll recall that we saw this at the beginning of the lesson. It's right here again. And now as a student, I'm going through and I have to answer some of these questions, right? And these are some fill in the blank questions. These do auto score. So as a student, I'm going to go through and I'm going to submit my answer right here. I don't think I got any of these correct. But this is the evaluation. It's tied to the case study, does not require any additional instructor grading. And as I mentioned, if it's something that you don't want to use, it's very easy to take these out of the courses. If I move now to my more traditional lesson assessment, I come here. And you'll see that I've actually already taken this lesson assessment, and I did not score particularly well. You'll also notice that I have due dates and whatnot. So the assessment engine allows you to schedule assessments. You can change parameters in terms of whether things are graded or practice. You can offer multiple attempts on things. You can control when students see correct answers, all of those kinds of parameters, everything you'd expect out of a traditional assessment engine. I'm going to begin my assessment here, and you'll see that I've given my questions that are associated with this particular lesson. I'm going to jump to the very end. I'm not going to take all the questions, and I'm going to submit it. When I submit my assessment, that's when the adaptive engine kicks in, and that's where we begin to personalize learning for each of the students. And what we do is we look at how the students have performed against each learning objective. We've looked at how much time they've spent on them, and we've looked at when they've mastered those. And what we are going to do is we are going to then populate their study center with the different material that they need to go back and remediate against. You'll see that for me, right, I haven't been doing particularly well. I actually have a number of topics that I need to go through, not only from lesson 4, but from lessons 2 and 3 as well. We like to keep students in control. So some of you, when you think about some of the adaptive products you've seen, they tend to, there are some extremes on these. There are some adaptive products that are very directive. So you take an assessment and it throws something and says, watch this video, answer this question, do this. We believe in keeping students in control of the material. We believe that maintains student confidence, it maintains student engagement, and it maintains student motivation if they control this journey. So the student is going to say, yes, I'm now ready to go back to topic 4.1 on the integumentary system. They're going to go back to their material. We're going to give them material that is familiar. We're not going to throw something new at them. We found that confuses students. That also confuses instructors because you don't know exactly what students have seen. So it makes it a little bit harder to help students. So we're going to direct them back to the material that they're familiar with. They can go through, again, the reading, the key terms, the exercises. They can also go back to the practice center and practice all of the material that is associated with that particular learning objective. And then when they are ready to reassess, they're going to open up their study center and they're going to be able to take a quiz that is focused specifically on this learning objective. So if they go through a lesson that has 4 learning objectives and they only need remediation against, say, one of them, they only need to go back and remediate against one. They don't need to go back and reassess against all 4. So keep it simple, keep it efficient, and a student can go through, they can take this assessment, and then if they pass this assessment, and if they meet the minimum cut score, then this topic will come out of their study center. So that's how they're managing this checklist in their study center, is by going through and demonstrating mastery against each one, against this material. Now, for students, there's a number of other things that we do within the platform to make learning simpler, easier, try to keep students here and engaged. So a couple of things that I'll run through. So the first is the assist button. So you'll see that if a student has trouble with something, they can pop open this assist window right here, and they can search for things. So if they say, you know what, I don't know where my grades are, they can search for that. They can simply click here. Where do I find my test scores or grades? They can also, if they need, they can open up a chat window right here, and they can live chat our help team if they had any particular questions about material or access or what it might be. Obviously, these are technical issues, not content issues. But we know that for technical issues, they should not go to you, the instructor. We don't expect you to understand the ins and outs of our platform. We don't expect that you would be the greatest person to help students. So we want to provide this for students. We provide a messaging panel. So as students enroll in your course, this list, just like a text message list, will start to fill up with the students that are enrolled in this course. Students can text message through the message center here, other students in the course, especially important for online courses where they're not necessarily sitting next to other students. So we want to use the tools that we have to create some sort of group dynamics and interpersonal and intersocial dynamics in an online course where students aren't sitting in the same room. Students have a notes panel. So you'll see that I have a couple of notes taken here. Epidermis consists of 4 to 5 layers of cells. I can take my notes right here just by clicking new note. These notes are tied to my pages. So as I click through each one of these pages, my notes will change. So they're auto-organized for students, which is a really nice function. They do have a course notebook, so they can get access to all of their notes, but this makes it very simple. So when a student comes back and they say they may need to remediate here, they can pop open their notes, they can take more notes, they can review their old notes. That auto-organizing feature is something that students talk about a lot, they really like. They have a calendar. You'll see here that I have my notion of a checklist. Students, for better or worse, like to go through courses and say, just tell me what I need to do. Well, this is what you need to do. You had a number of things that were due in the past and you've submitted them. We've noted that for you. You've got things that are due here in the future. So on Saturday, October 10th, you have a number of things due for chapter 5. And you can simply click on those and take them. When you submit them, they will show as submitted. So it's a very nice checklist function or calendar function that students can use. Search functionality, so students can search other things. Obviously, a lot of this material builds on itself. So if they're in chapter 12 and they're forgot something from chapter 3, they could search for things and it makes it easy to navigate the course. They have a glossary. So if there are certain terms that they forgot, they can pop them in right here and they can search through this. And this is also, it is a searchable glossary, so I can search for things and it will then pull up that particular term. And then finally, the last thing I'll show here is there is a professor video meeting, and you'll see this is going to pop my meeting open and you will see me. Hello. Professor video meeting. This is professor office hours. So you as the instructor can pop this open. All of your students can jump into the course and they can click that same button that I just clicked and they will all of a sudden start showing up just like a Zoom meeting, just like a GoToWebinar, and you could hold online office hours for students. So it's a way that in an online course where students may not be able to get to physical office hours or may not be able to get to office hours at a specific time, very easy way to have face-to-face engagement with students where face-to-face engagement isn't really conducive. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to talk through some of the instructor capabilities and instructor resources. And I'll talk through that, and then that will take us just a few minutes, and then we'll open this up to questions. So there are two things that I'm going to talk about. One is customization, and I'll do this relatively quickly. So I'm flipping over to a phlebotomy course, and you'll notice this is also my fall 2020 course. You will notice that this is changed a little bit, this welcome to phlebotomy. I have changed that for my course. You will notice that my first chapter is no longer my first chapter, that I've actually added a welcome message here. You'll also notice that in the previous course where these were called chapters, I've actually renamed these as weeks. This is a fairly common kind of customization that we see. So you as the instructor, you have complete edit rights to this. So if you wanted to pull chapters out, if you wanted to reorder chapters, if you wanted to rename things, you could do that. Much like I've done here with this welcome, if you wanted to add things to a course, you can certainly do that. I know a lot of you have your own videos where you might talk about a particular topic. You can load that into existing material or existing pages as part of the course, or you can create your own. All of this is entirely customizable. So a feature that's there for you. The other things that I will talk about, excuse me. Oh, sorry, let me jump to this window here. So what I'm also going to jump to here is the gradebook and the Insight Center. So as part of each of your courses, you get a gradebook, not surprising. The gradebook populates with all of the students. It's going to populate with all of the scores that are available. We can set up an LTI linkage for you, so these scores are pushed back to your gradebook, whether it's Canvas or Blackboard or any other LTI compliant LMS. So these scores can also push back to your gradebook. So a very typical gradebook that you can work with. You're going to be given some triggers, so you'll see if students have submitted things late, you'll get things like this yellow triangle. If there's things that you need to manually grade as instructor, you'll get this pencil. So allowing you to see all of these kinds of things. And then you're also provided with an Insight Center. And I've clicked through to an Insight Center. This is an Insight Center that's been loaded with some data. We try to assist professors in doing a couple of things that we hear from you are troubling and that create a lot of time commitment, or require a lot of time commitment. The first is this question of, well, how many students or what % of my students are on track to pass the course? So we give you this learning dial, and you will see that we're going to break down students into their bands. So how well they're performing, 90 to 100%, 80 to 89%, and you're going to be able to get a view into that. You're going to be able to click in and see all of the students and see their average score. So we have data loaded here for Enrico Fermi. And you'll see that I can now also deep dive onto this particular student. And when I do that, I'm given information about how this student has performed lesson to lesson. So you'll see that right here, Enrico Fermi has been scoring a 97% average. And you can see how it breaks down lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. So you can see longitudinally if they're trajecting up or if their trajectory is going down. And you can also see how they're comparing to the class average, because in some classes, 97% is very different than the 97% in other classes. So you can see that this particular student here is actually doing better than the class average, and you can see that lesson to lesson as well. And we're going to give you views not only into the average, but in terms of time. So you'll also be able to very easily see how much time the student has spent week to week. We also provide the engagement dial. And we're going to break down your students, whether they are on track or if they are off track, they are going to show as either struggling or disengaged. And when I click on that, you're going to be able to see how my students break down into that. If I click email here, it's going to open my email system and it's going to BCC all of these students. One of the things we see instructors do a lot is email the struggling students. We hear from you all the time that if a student is struggling, meaning they're not doing well, but they are spending time in the material, you're going to reach out to them. You're going to want to help them, remind them that you have office hours. Try to dig in and see where you can help them, as opposed to a disengaged student. A disengaged student, someone who is not spending time in the material. The message there is a little bit different from the instructor. So we're going to assist you by breaking down your students so you can very easily see who is struggling, spending time, versus who is disengaged. We are also going to, and you can see down here at the bottom, there's a number of things on this page that I'm not going to click through, but the alerts, you'll see that I have some alerts here and I'm going to click on these. We, as part of Junction, are going to send a message to all of your students once a week. The message is going to go SMS and email. So it is going to reach them on their phones. And the messages are algorithmically driven, and they are based off of how they're performing. So if they are a struggling student, they're going to get a positive message about coming back into the material and improving their score. If they're disengaged, they will get a message about coming back into the material and starting to learn. And if they are on track, they will get a positive message reinforcing that behavior. This is intended, right? Reach them when they are not in the courseware. Remind them on a Tuesday that they have to do this. It increases motivation, it increases the likelihood that they'll come back, and it keeps students engaged in the material. So we built this in. This is what you can consider an early alert system or an early warning system, but it automates a lot of these messages, so you don't have to necessarily think about those kinds of things. So with that, you've seen a number of the student features. You've seen the content from the student side, which I'm going to click back to over here. You've seen some of the instructor features. With that, let me open it up to some questions, which I know have been, I think they've been coming in through the questions tab, but we can go ahead and answer some of those questions now if you wanted.
Thank you, Derek. Let me just read off a couple of these. Are there any complaints or concerns about professors not being able to personalize the materials? If you take the program, how best would you insert yourself so the students could still hear and connect with you?
Yep, that's a great question. So obviously, we have lots of professors that simply take this and deliver it as is. But in terms of customization, it can be done at any level you like. So some of the more basics are, in some schools, MedTerm is a 2-part course, so you can break this up into 2 parts. In terms of instructor personalization, what we've seen that actually works really nicely is a short video from the instructors against each chapter. So say I was talking about the integumentary system, the instructor just sits in front of their computer, their face, their voice, and talks about the integumentary system. Not so much the content, a little bit more about, right, this is why we're talking about it, this is what's important. 60 seconds of the instructor's face, the instructor's voice, setting a little context. And then that video, if I click into the integumentary system, can either be added as a new page up at the top, and we might call it Professor Wessler's Introduction to the Integumentary System, or it can actually be added to this page as well and show up in these tabs. But giving that instructor, right, it's the instructor's face, it's the instructor's voice, it doesn't need to replace the content, but a bit of this context of this is what we're learning, this is why it's important, these are some of the things that you should be thinking about as you're going through this material. That's a really nice way to personalize the content.
Great, Derek. A tangent to that is, does the instructor have the ability to add videos in addition to those included through Khan and when TEDx, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. So the courses are entirely editable, excuse me. So you can add things, you can remove things. We've actually, we have a number of instructors not using this material who build custom courses from scratch on our platform, including any kind of material they want, PDFs, videos, web resources, images, anything you could really imagine. So yes, you can build and edit to your heart's content. That's for individual instructors. That also, we do work with a number of large online institutions where the school itself says, you know what, we actually want to customize this either to meet our syllabus, which is a little bit different than the way the content is laid out, or because we want to add some specific discussion boards and materials or our own final exams, which are different. And we can customize that for an institution as well.
Great, thank you, Derek. We've got a couple more, but I want to leave the floor open for other people. Anybody else have any questions? If not, here's a couple quick ones. Can a student copy and paste from the ebook into their notes?
That is a good question. I'll have to double check. I don't believe they can copy from the ebook, so they can highlight into the ebook, but I don't believe they can copy.
All right, terrific.
I will say that having students retype from the ebook, forcing that is actually a very good way to remember the material that you're writing and to master that material. But I believe the digital rights management on the ebook means that copying is not allowed.
Can you also cover, we have another question, the meaning of the red and green bar and the...
Yes, and apologies for not doing that previously. So yes, we try to use navigation and visuals as cues as much as possible. So as you'll see, I have my red and green bars here. These are mastery bars. And if I click on any of them, you will see that, right, I had 2 learning objectives in this particular lesson, one on clinical aspects of the skin and one on the integumentary system. This is my mastery of them. It's not very good, but the progress is shown here. What we typically see and what we like to see is that, assuming I were a student in week 4, that these are mostly green, and that the week that I'm working on, or the chapter that I'm working on, maybe the first time I go through it, it looks something like this. But as I go through the material more and more, and I learn more and more, I will continue to get that green, that green to grow and the red to shrink. So by the end of the term, ideally, most of these are all green.
Terrific. Another question here. How would this allow individuality among universities? Won't all schools be delivering the same class?
So that's a good question. And the answer is no. So what happens is when you, either as an instructor or as an institution, request a copy, or you're essentially given a clone of the master, you can then make any changes that you like, and the changes that you make are to your course only. And that could be to either you as an individual instructor or to you as an institution. So we have institutions, we currently have institutions that are using this particular course where they've actually customized it rather significantly and taken other material from A&P courses and inserted it. They've removed certain things, they've added certain things, and they've integrated it with their LMS in a meaningful way. That is theirs. So any material that you add is yours and not shared with the broader group of instructors. Now you can if you like, but it is not. So your version becomes your version, and you can then keep using that from term to term.
That's great. We have a number of questions around customization of information that goes out in student comments. I'll have a few of those there. Can an instructor customize the outgoing text that the instructor sends to students?
So that's a good question. Right now, you cannot, but that is very high on our development priority because we have heard that from instructors that they want to be able to do that. So that is coming soon.
And can that text be disabled if the instructor prefers to do his or her own thing?
Yes. So it's actually a good question and is applicable to a whole suite of features here. So yes. When you adopt, you get the complete course with all of the bells and whistles. This messages panel, as with the others, you can disable this. If you say, you know what, I don't want to have to monitor this, you don't have to use it. If you don't want your professor video meeting, you can disable that, so it just wouldn't show up. If you're teaching this as kind of a calendarless or asynchronous course, you can remove the calendar. So all of those things are switches where you can disable them and they simply go away. Students don't even know they exist.
Terrific. I think I'm gonna plow through other questions that we've got coming in, but I think now is the time to let you continue and move on to other content, and I will also field some of these other questions. If anybody feels like they want to ask the question by voice, just unmute yourself and please ask Derek those questions.
So I am looking at one, there is a question here about a chat feature. Is there a chat feature? And yes, there are two ways to do chat. So there is a messages panel, and as I mentioned, as students enroll in this course, there are no students here, this will fill up, and this basically works the same way SMS does, so students can chat. The other thing we've added, so I'm going to click back here into the integumentary system lesson. As at the very, very end, we've included this reflect and collaborate lesson. And I'm going to click on this. And this is essentially a discussion board or a chat or a communal feature for your students. We say here, right, that this is not for grades, this is not for time-specific questions, but this is a place where students can talk about the material, what they liked about the material, what concepts they may have found hard. So it's a bit of this kind of notion of a listening post. Some schools use this, some schools take it out. Some instructors, if instructors focus on it and answer questions in there, it actually gets used a lot. So in terms of chat and thinking about how to use chat, we do include some features like that.
In the interest of time, we've allocated an hour. We will. There's some questions that we haven't gotten to yet. We will look through the questions that have come in, and we'll get back to people individually. But I'll turn things back over to Derek and to Bill.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Stephen, one question that came through to me that I should have addressed, but I didn't, was around price of these, and so I'll just address that now. Yeah, so we're pricing these. When we looked at this, you know, we want to price them equivalent to the price of a standalone ebook. Obviously, we sell standalone ebooks, as our competitors do as well. So we're pricing these a flat $65. So that again is pretty equivalent to what you see on the market for standalone ebook prices, plus all that additional value in terms of the courseware. And I think you'll find that's, you know, a little more than 30% less than equivalent online courses that you see out there in the market. So $65 flat, all the courses. That is our price model. Alrighty, so we mentioned the follow-up email. We'll send this to you probably by tomorrow afternoon. We have another session of this. So, in that will be this URL where you're able to go and we can set you up with a with your own access. So we'll ask you to go into this URL. You can fill out a couple questions, give us some contact information and what course or course areas you're interested in, and we can set you up with your own course. And again, I want to thank you all for making time, and Derek, thank you for that great demo. And with that, we'll end our presentation. Thank you.